Okay, this is a short introduction how to write API tests in Tracardi. API tests are placed in Tracardi API app tests API, and here we go, several tests. And right now I'm going to extend the test consent type file with the test of the API consent type. You can take a look here. We have a consent type API. This is the endpoint, and I see that it loads the consent types, and what it needs start and limit, and that's it. So I'm going to write an automated test and use a built-in endpoint class that will allow me to query this endpoint and see if the return data is okay. Let me make a quick break here. Before we continue, you have to know that in order to run API tests, you have to log into Tracardi API. I will show you how to pass the data with the credentials to the API. In order for the API test to work, you have to type your credentials to the Tracardi API, and you can find it in .env file. If you don't have this file, just create it and type your API URL, port, login and password. This is how the test will log into the Tracardi and will perform all the automated tests. Okay, now let's continue with our tests. So this is how you query the endpoint. Endpoint is defined up here, just endpoint, and it's from utils. And right now let's try and run this. Okay, and it fails. It says that index is not found. It means that my running Tracardi is not installed. So you have to remember that when you test APIs, you have to have a running Tracardi API. So okay, it's not installed, so I'm installing it. I'm in. Let's try and run it again, and it passed. It actually read the result. So this time I'm going to see what's in the result. Actually, it's not a result, it's a response. So to get a result, we need to response JSON. So let's inspect it. We are querying our consent type endpoint. We just go and see if it's, yes, it's get consent type, and I'm expecting JSON here. Okay, let's run it. Here we go, and it says okay, there is no consent types. So to test it, I would have to add some consent type and then just query this endpoint. So let's go. I see that I have some add consent type tests. I will add consent type, expect some result, and then query for the consent type. Okay, let's do it. So right now I'm posting some data to the post consent type that adds new consent type, then expecting some results, and then querying again the consent type API. Right now I can see that I have one consent type, and this is the one I've added, test name. Let's go and right now write some assertions. So I'm assert that my response status code is 200. That means that it's okay, and I assert that the result ID, okay, it's the first element. Okay, result ID is test name, so that it is correct, equals test name. Okay, let's run it. The test passed. And one last thing with the test, we have to clean everything up, because the next test could use the same data and then we could have an error. So for example, if we have another test that uses consent types and it has this data that is not expecting, then we can just fail the test. So right now try and finally, so this will be run, and if anything happens here, an error or anything, this endpoint will be executed, and it deletes a constant type that has ID test name. This is the one I added. Okay, so let's run it again. Perfect. Okay, so this is quite easy to see in Tracardi. When we log in into Tracardi and we go to constant types, you can see that there is no constant type. Let's do a test, and I will just not delete this constant type and run it again. Okay, so let's go to constant types. You can see how many constant types it created with tag 1, tag 2 and tag 3. You can take a look. Yes, tag 1, tag 2 and tag 3, and we didn't delete it, so the next test can fail because it would expect that there are no constant types. And at the end I would like to show you a short test that tests if the endpoint fails, because we have to also test the negative path. If something goes wrong, the test should detect it. I've also written a fail test. It means that I'm testing not the positive path but the negative path. What does it mean? I'm posting a destination without the data, and I'm expecting that it will throw an error. So this is when something goes wrong, and then it should not be added, this destination. So I'm finally expecting that when I call endpoint delete destination with the ID, I'm expecting the code 404. It means that it does not exist.